it really breaks your heart when you hear, like, specifically somebody in the church doing something that they shouldn't be doing, like to someone that's going to that church or whatever, right? And I hear somebody saying, well, I put my faith in this person, right? And it's like, why?
All right, welcome to the All Things Performance Podcast. I'm really excited about today, man. Got a special guest in the building, Houston Woodard. Houston, how we doing, man?
Good, man. How you living?
All right? Good, man. Good. So Houston, for those that don't know, Houston is a local pastor here in Maryville. Prior to that, we're going to get into that, but you oversaw a pretty extensive sports program.
Yeah.
But before that, we're just going to get into background. So Merced, not man. Mercedes,
not
but
Mercedes.
Merced, California, man. Talk to us about growing up, man.
Man, I grew up. Merced it's most people that don't know about it. It's about 45 minutes north of Fresno. And funny that you say Mercedes, like some people will say that. It doesn't even, if you're looking at like line of cars, Mercedes is up there. Merced, it doesn't reciprocate with the name. But just grew up in a pretty, like, I don't want to say rough, but like it's a pretty rough area. But had great parents, right? Where or my dad and my stepmom specifically, and then like my mom struggled with drugs, and like and it's not a bash on her by any means, but just had her own demons that she battles, and so got all my brothers went down the gang route, man, and my dad, he's in a motorcycle club that they call club, but same thing, right?
Yeah.
And lived out there, and when I moved here, it was after my freshman year. I was finally in school, like really at the same time as some of my brothers, and was ditching and carrying on, and went from K8 of never having a B, right, in school, and then my freshman year, man, I was hiding report cards and all that. And
this is you now. Now you're talking about you now.
Yeah,
okay.
This is me. And my dad got my last report card, man, and my GPA was like a 1.6. I think it was terrible. So that's in May, and we moved in August, man. And it was my dad's. In his head was his only chance to like make sure my sister and me didn't go down that path, right? Yeah. And so that saved my life, man. Like moving here, I moved here in August of 2003.
And here you mean
to Phoenix, Arizona?
Phoenix,
yeah. And I moved to Glendale.
Okay.
I went to Independence High School, and then man, like that's like the Merced stuff. After high school, I moved out right when I turned 18. Me and my dad, man, we butted heads pretty heavy. And you turn 18 and you think you've grown, and so I moved out. Just was not ready for that. Got evicted from 2 apartments, and then in 2010, I joined the Army. So when I was 21, and that really saved my life too, right? Like just the path I was going down prior to. I mean, I was still going. I did 2 years in college, like at GCC, had an academic scholarship, but definitely wasn't living any kind of life trying to be like Jesus by any means. And so met my wife when I was in San Antonio. Didn't meet her there. My sister reached out and was like, "Hey, you got a friend? Would like to give her your number, blah, blah." So at first I was kind of like, nah, I don't think I'm cool. And my sister's younger than me. But we ended up talking. It was in June of 2010. I came home in August, and we finally met in person. Spent my 2 weeks before I moved. I was stationed in Hawaii, so I moved to Hawaii.
Yeah.
She came out in October for a week. I came home in December and proposed.
So it was quick.
And then I got married in March, right before I deployed. So I got married from meeting my wife within 9 months, and only being in person with each other for a very small amount of time. And then I was about to deploy to Afghanistan, got married, and then we had our wedding ceremony after my deployment. So,
wow. So in the last 3 minutes, you just kind of, you given us a lot there, and we're going to come back to that because your story is amazing, man, and what you've done and how you've been able to impact people has been really tremendous, man. And so, just for the viewers listening, man, that was action-packed 3 minutes, and we're going to unpack a lot more today. So, one of the things that you said, so Merced, I mean, your parents, your brothers were involved in some gangs. It was probably a tenuous household, with mom and dad that you briefly alluded to. Yeah. But then you fast forward, school. Talk to us about I want to hit real quick before we get into it. What was like the most impactful thing that you learned from being a combat medic? Because I don't want to glance over that. You were in the military, and you were a combat medic. You know what I'm saying? So talk to us a little bit about that, and what the most impactful thing was that you got from that.
I mean, just from I say this. There's a quote that really stuck out through. I mean, from basic training, AIT, which is like your medic school. But in our medic school, man, they would put you in these like wild situations, right, of like patient care. So they'd put us in a room kind of like this, right, and then turn off the lights, put on like a red light in the background, and then strobe lights and all this stuff, and they'd give you a casualty right there, and you're supposed to treat them. And then but there's like battle sounds, and they're screaming at you to save him. He's dying, blah blah blah, all this crazy stuff. But then, like, once they see you start fumbling your, just your materials that you're using, all this stuff, then they would finally tell you, like, hey, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Yep. And what they're saying is, like, man, like, I could sit here and go and, do this step and that step, but when I start skipping stuff, then we miss things, right? And so that's something, man, like I would say as a medic, that I've just tried to take that part, that quote, and use it in life.
Say that again for us. Say that again.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Yep. And think about it as a father, as a husband, in your career, whatever that is. If you're an athlete, like, especially in that baseball world, I know you worked with the Rangers, man, and I'm sure everybody like tries to, you get drafted and you think it's like, hey, I'm about to be in the big leagues, and it's like, bro, your journey may be
10 years
before you make it, right? Or you never make it.
Yep.
And so that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, man, is like, it just makes you put it into perspective. And now being in ministry, like now it's just like, hey, like I kind of make that it's God's timing anyway, and because we want to make things happen, but it's like just do it, and then it'll come.
I love it, man. I love it. So this is a loaded question, and I'm challenging you to answer it like with a singular answer if you can.
I got you.
But like all the background, right? Drugs, gangs, tough upbringing, military. What led you into ministry, bro? Like, what did you just wake up and be like, man, I'm about to be a pastor? Like, what led you into ministry, man?
Oh, man, you said short answer for that.
Is there a word that comes to mind?
Yeah, I would say faithfulness. Before I made the decision to stop, putting it off, because it was something on my heart for a few years. Putting off going into ministry, or at least like exploring what that looked like, right? Because I didn't go to Bible college. I didn't, I was raised Christian, but I was wilding out too, right? And so having that fear at first of when I started feeling called to ministry, it was like, man, I was teaching at the time, or I was teaching here in the Valley. Just was almost done with my master's in educational leadership to go the admin route. And so I was so afraid of switching to ministry because of, like, and it's not to be cocky by any means, but I was a good teacher, right? And I knew I would have been a good administrator. But there was something super scary about being a trash pastor, that, like for lack of better words, like just like, because like my mindset was like that's what it took to be a pastor, man. Like, and so like you played high level athlete, like in football, man, and you get used to, especially, and I think just from like regardless of what level of athletics you played in, high school, little league, whatever, I think when you play something decent enough, or you do well enough at whatever thing it is that you're good at, like it's hard to accept being bad at something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like as a career, man, like I knew I was a good medic, you know, and prior to that, like I was like, you know, you're trying to be good at like you're pursuing the things you know you're good at.
Yes.
And so going into ministry, man, that was scary.
You weren't 100% sure on that.
No.
Yeah. So when you say, for people listening today, like when you say, oh, a calling, I had a calling. We hear that a lot, right? Oh, I had a calling to go to ministry.
Yeah.
I had a calling to be a pastor. Like what does that mean, bro? Like is it a feeling? Is it an experience? Is it like it's a vision? It's something on your heart that you can't shake? Like what does that mean? If you were to explain it to a group of people who were ask you that, like what would you say to them?
I mean, I think it's something that God has put on your heart. Right, and now it's your job to go and explore what that is, or what He's calling you to do. Right, like for me, just going in ministry, that just a simple conversation with one of the pastors that I knew about, hey man, I feel like I'm being called to ministry, but you know I have this background, I did this, I don't have this, and so it's being obedient. Right, and so I think for us, when you know we've been, it's like that tug on your heart where it's, you know, it could be about, and it doesn't have to be about going into ministry, but man, maybe you've been super invested in church, but you haven't started tithing yet, right? But then you get a message where they're talking about tithing, and you start feeling that, but then you start thinking like, well, my bread's kind of jacked up right now. So how do I do this?
I'll tithe.
You know what I mean?
I'll tithe when I get paid.
Yeah,
when I get that bag.
So I think it's the being obedient, right? And then it's something about that obedience, and now being fully bought into my faith. It comes natural now, right? Where there's times where it's kind of unknown of what could happen, but I feel like God is putting this on my heart, so I'm gonna just do it.
I heard a pastor once say, he said that, you know, one of the ways that you know what your purpose is, or the vision that God has given you in your life, is when you have this thing in your heart that's bigger than you, and you can't shake it, and you always keep thinking about it, and it doesn't leave. I'm talking about after years. I'm talking decades. Like, I want to do this. I want to start this orphanage. You know what I'm saying? In the city, or you know, overseas. I want to build a school for inner city kids. I want to do X, Y, Z. He said that's one of the ways that you can tell that God is speaking to you, is that vision is unshakable. And then you wake up 2 years later and you still thinking about that same thing. 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years later, you're still thinking about that thing. So I love the definition there. You know, I want to, you know, I know you can handle it. So one loaded question after another here, man. You know, it's been said that church is one of the most segregated places on Sundays, right? You got black church, white church, you got synagogues, you got mosques, right? You got inner city, you got mega church, you got the little church on the south side, right? And you look around and it's just like, yo, man, everybody looks the same in here. Everybody has the same experiences. It's not really, you know, it's not really mixed up, right? That's a loaded question, but why do you think that is, man?
I think it's because we're so used to being comfortable, right? Like it's, I grew up small black, like Pentecostal church, right? And so like when I first went to the church I work at now, man, like being a big church, right? I'm like it's big, and so like, you know, I was already used to like what church looked like at least in my eyes, right? It was like, you didn't know when you first, like with a Pentecostal church, and you know, we had folks that spoke in tongues and passed out, and so for me, that's what I thought, and I knew what church was, right? And
that was normal.
And that was normal, right? And then like you didn't know what time he was going home on Sunday. They, like altar call, multiple offering, you know what I'm saying? Like all that, and it's not a knock on that church.
That's what
right.
We knew.
That's what I grew up in. And then once I started going to CCV, it was just it was different, but the first thing that drew me to it was other than my wife. Like my wife went to started going there in high school. But the big thing that drew me to it, and it sounds terrible, like in the role I'm in now, was that it was an hour. From start to finish, it was 1 hour. Like it was was not used to that, right? And then as you get plugged in, and then you start to realize, like, man, regardless of what this person or the large majority of these people look like, that's not what's important right now, right? Like, man, like, where am I at in my faith walk right now? And then what I love about our church is that we are all throughout the valley now. And now at the campus I'm at here in Maryville, like, it's a pretty diverse campus, right? Like, and because I know you've gone to our Peoria location, but like, it is for sure. If you come by there, man, it's not like what you would think of, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah. You know, when you start looking at, inner city churches, mega churches, churches in the city, churches in the suburbs, what is the biggest difference, man? Like again, another loaded question.
Yeah.
But like, what is the biggest difference? Because you've seen it now on both ends. We Pentecostal, high energy, not knowing when we're going to go back home.
Yeah.
And then it's just like buttoned up, like, and it looks like this. What would you say is the biggest difference in experience for the churchgoer?
Man, it's definitely like when you say experience, I think because of the resources of a bigger church, that experience is a way cooler experience, right?
Yeah.
Like, you look at the lights and all that, and it's amazing, right? And the folks that have come in to do worship, like, it's legit. Like, I remember growing up in like our choir, and it'd be mother whoever, or sister whoever,
auntie
and
such
like,
and such,
and it's like, they couldn't even really sing, man.
Yeah.
Like,
but they was putting it down,
but
they were giving up themselves.
Yeah, and so I think from why the experience is different, I think it really, naturally we kind of fall into the mindset of like, hey, well, this is what we've always done, right? And so if you look at some of the smaller churches, that sometimes there's not the innovation behind it, and maybe there's not always multiple folks there to give ideas that are actually listened to and maybe brought to fruition, right? And so like at a bigger church, man, I think that's the beauty of it, like, where you have different minds there and different like people that are willing to listen. And so it's almost like when you look at going to a big school and a small school for sports, right? Like, there's just so much more selection, there's so much more this, and it's like, if you told me to go to 2A school or go to a 6A school, like, for me personally, I'm gonna be like, dude, I'm gonna go to 6A all day just because of everything they have.
Yeah.
You could be the best or the worst athlete, like, I'm still gonna choose the bigger school because they got Nike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nike, sponsored by Nike.
Yeah.
I think the word that comes to my mind as you're breaking this all down, I think you said something powerful in terms of, when you started going to church, looking around, it's just like everybody looked the same. And you said a word, man. You said comfort, right? And a lot of people like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And anybody who really truly seeks to follow God, they know that it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
It's never going to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and another thing too, you said something powerful when you start looking at the different dynamics of church, right? Like, resources, man. When you have resources in a big church, or you have resources, as you alluded to, in a big school, right, you can do more.
Yeah.
When you have resources, you can do more.
Yeah.
And so that's something that definitely needs to be addressed. We've seen a lot of scandals recently, right? I'm not going to name any churches right now, because we all know, we all know what we've seen on the media and stuff like that. And then people will say from time to time, man, church, pastors are hypocrites, right? Christians are hypocrites. Fill in the blank. Religious people, right? I don't want to go to church because, the pastor's going to steal all the money, or these people are faker than a mug. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, there are full blown IG channels, social media channels that are dedicated to seeing how much the pastor's making and the kind of shoes brother's wearing. You know what I'm saying? How many jets he has. Like, oh yeah, he got Gucci's on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like full blown channels, dedicated to this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you enter into that conversation and encourage somebody and like shed light and bring reason? How do you when it comes to people being hypocritical, people leading out of fakeness, that whole thing, man. How do you enter into that conversation, man?
I mean, it's when you think of someone that's let's just say a non-believer, right? And to me, when you have somebody that's so passionate about trying to find out the bad about a church or about a religion, right? I think in my mind is, what do you have to lose to try it out then? Like if you want to know what it truly is, why not like engulf yourself in it, right? Like why not put yourself fully in it to see what this hype is about, or why this is this or why this is that, right? Like when we start looking at like the shoes that somebody's wearing or the clothes, like of course that first right off the bat is going to come as like, oh well, this dude's using this money to pay for this or whatever, right? But when I first started tithing, my big thing was I didn't want to do it because I grew up in a small church, and so my granny tithed. That was every time that she got paid. That was second nature. And so for me, I'd be like, man, like why does she keep giving her money when the church still looks the same, right? Like there's no like minor improvements, right? And so I had this conversation when my wife was on my line about tithing, right? And I was, still on the fence, and she told me, like she was just wanting to do it. So my granny, that's my faith rock, man. Like she is the woman that introduced me to Jesus, and has been so faithful throughout her life, and like the type of churchgoer that she'd be at choir rehearsal on Wednesdays, and she's not in the choir. You know what I mean? Like that, she loves that church. And so I called her and was like, well, why do you tithe? And I'm almost like kind of bad, like almost like bashing the church that I grew up in, right?
Yeah.
And she was like, you can't concern yourself with what is being done with the money. What you needed to be doing is being obedient to what the Bible says.
Yeah.
Right. And so once I took that mindset, man, you could look at whoever on Instagram or like these big churches or whatever, like the ones that follow with all the followers and the preachers and sneakers and all that stuff. But you could look at that, but once you start concerning yourself with somebody else's finances and what they're doing, is like you're doing too much, right? Like what are you doing and being obedient in what you're like in your faith, right? And so it's hard for me to listen to that kind of stuff because when I have people that want to talk about being at a big church or just the faith in general or Christianity in general, is like, man, you go anywhere and whether there's people that are bad apples as well. Right. You know what I mean? And so my thing would just tell them, like, then come try it out. Yeah. And you can tell me why it's so bad. Why was it so bad for you? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
what I think you make some really powerful points. Man. When you start looking at people who've gone to church, who've been hurt in church, who've been misled in church. We look at some of the scandals that have been going on with different denominations, which we're not going to talk about the specific denomination because it doesn't matter, right? There's different people that would say, man, I don't trust people anymore. I don't trust this person, right, anymore. I don't trust, I don't care how holy you are. You know what I mean? Like how do you answer that? Because there's been people who've been wounded, man, by pastors, bro, by priests. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all know, like, there's been people who've been misled. Marriages have been shattered because of pastors, you know what I'm saying, doing, the unthinkable, you know what I'm saying, with people in the congregation. And so, like, how do you enter into that conversation and still encourage somebody through that hurt, through that pain, through that letdown, and say, man, listen, man, like, it ain't about them. It ain't about this. It's about him. Like, how do you?
I think it's, when you think about that, right? Like, I don't put my faith in anybody except Jesus. Yeah. Right. And so, like, somebody's going to wrong me at some point in my life, whether they're in the church or not in the church. But at the end of the day, me being a Christ follower, that's not going to shake how I feel about Jesus or how I feel about God, right? Like, that won't happen. It doesn't matter who it is. Like, somebody that, like you're saying, like a priest or like whatever it is, that we're never told, hey, put your faith in this person other than Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, I'm not trying to be like insensitive to anybody like that's experienced that stuff, but I hope that you understand that that's where you're supposed to put your faith in Jesus, not in like, oh, I get it. There's a difference between faith and trust.
Yeah.
And people break trust, right? And like, man, run away from that. Like, run far away from that, but don't run away from Him.
Yeah. No,
right?
I love
so
that.
Like that's what I think is how I would answer that. I don't know if that
that's
makes
perfect.
sense,
That's
man.
perfect.
Yeah.
You said it. You said it, man. And it's like one of the things to echo that is one of the things I tell my kids is like, listen, man, like there is no one perfect person in this world. There's not one perfect church in this world.
Yeah.
If you think there is, you are going to be let down because there was only one perfect.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There was only one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, we don't need to be putting our faith, hope, and trust in people or in buildings or in leadership. We need to put our faith, hope, and trust in God and knowing that He's dealing with broken people because we are broken, right? We're not perfect.
Yeah.
So, no, I love the insight there. You were a pastor here at a pretty big church at one point, leading a pretty extensive youth ministry, more specifically a sports ministry. And you oversaw football, and you oversaw, which is the best sport in the world, by the way, and you oversaw baseball, correct? And so, I mean, we're talking about thousands upon thousands of kids, bruh, right? Like when you just like take the wide swath of, the metropolis. What was the biggest thing you took away from that, man? Just dealing with parents, dealing with coaches, sport culture, leadership, admin, like to run that type of program. That's how I first met you. I remember I was taking Michael, to practice, you know what I'm saying? And I saw this brother, he's like, hey, man. I was like, hey, man, you know what I'm saying? And then you put me to work, you know?
Yeah, got you coaching, man.
But what was the biggest takeaway, man, that you took away from that season of life, man?
I mean, I think it goes without saying, there's like, I think my biggest thing would be, I guess not without saying, but is embrace messy people, right? Like I'm messy. Like you said earlier, nobody's perfect, right? We have one person on this earth that's been perfect, and that's Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, you can go into a tough conversation with a parent or with a coach or with a ref or with whatever, and you still have to understand, like, man, like there's just messy people here, and like there's this idea that because it's a league that's at a church or that's run through a church, that it's going to be, no dust ups on the sideline, no parents arguing, and it's like, no, man, you're forgetting that it's still messy people, right? And so the beauty of it is to figure out your way, your role in trying to shine a light on Jesus in this tough conversation, right, or in this tough situation, and that taught me a lot. There's, you had to learn. Or I had to learn to, like bite my tongue and not respond out of emotion and not or anger. One thing I love that we have, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is the 24-hour rule.
Yeah.
Like, man, you can be mad at a ref, or this coach did this, or this parent said that, and we would tell coaches or whoever brought that to us, like, all right, hey, we'll talk about it in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And most of the time after those 24 hours, it's like, oh, this really wasn't even a big deal.
Takes care of itself.
Right? Not to say that everything resolves itself like that, but majority of the time, especially in athletics, there it's just the competitive nature comes out, right? And so I think just understanding we work with messy people, we are all messy people, and so giving grace and like understanding that.
That's, you dealt with it all, bro. You dealt with refs who were pissed. You dealt with parents who were pissed. Everybody's favorite player is their kid. You know what I'm saying? Coaches who were, knuckleheads. You know what I'm saying? I'll throw myself into that category as well. You know what I'm saying? As far as the way I reacted to a couple of things, but man, I love that, man. When you start looking at sports, right? Why is sports, and again, another loaded question, but you've been, you 100%, you batting 1,000 right now, you know what I'm saying? You batting 1,000. So when you start looking at sports, why is sports so important for the culture, bro? Like in terms of, development, in terms of camaraderie, unit? Like, why? What, in your estimation, is the reason why sports is so important for culture?
I just think like you know, you look at one of the best movies of all time, man. Remember the Titans, right? Like, look at what that did, right? From like segregation and bringing the school together, black and white, and by the end of that, like what the impact that had on that community,
Yeah.
right? Like to see through color, to see, and you just build this bond, man. And then it's like, I think for everything that you can take. That's why I love sports, is you just learn so many different life lessons in it.
Yeah.
Right? Like and growing up, I'm 35, man, and so, you know, I grew up with like my dad coached me till I got to high school pretty much, and in football specifically. And shoot, man, I grew up with where my pops would grab hold of that face mask, man, when I'm doing something silly, or you know what I'm saying, and shake the heck out of you, man. I don't condone that now.
Different times. Different
Yeah,
times.
different times, man. But I learned a lot from it though, right?
Yeah.
Where I learned, like, man, like, do your job, right? Like that. Like, I'm not asking you to be, you know, I've always been a line guy, bro. D line or O line. Like, I just always been a big boy, and like for me, it was, you know, in your head, you like, bro, you know how amazing it'd be to score a touchdown, like for like
For a
cat
big-
like me,
for a
right?
big boy.
Like,
Yeah.
bro. Like, and so, you know, you start thinking that you're this position. You start thinking that, like, especially hoopers, like hoopers, man. Everybody wants to rock. Everybody's a shooting guard.
Yep.
Right, and it's like, bro, you 6'11",
Oh,
and your
dog.
name's not Kevin Durant,
Oh,
bro.
dog.
So I promise you, get your tail right over in that post, right? Like, so it teaches you like the disciplines, the teamwork, the like doing your job, man. Like, I think it punctuality. If you have a legit coach too, though, right? Like, if you got a coach that's letting you
Just
be
do
late
whatever.
and do whatever, then okay, then yeah, like maybe that sports culture isn't for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, because, and that's what sucks with the inner city, right? There's athletes for days, but
No shortage.
but no shortage of that, right? But coaches don't stay,
Yeah.
right? Because it's, you know, some maybe are not used to that culture, or right, the inner city. I don't care, black, white, Hispanic, whatever it is. If you're not from the inner city, it's going to be pretty hard to come and coach in the inner city.
Yeah.
And so that's why you don't see a lot of consistent coaches there, man, because it's a completely different world.
It goes back
right?
to that. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with resources.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, I remember when I was, you know, working with FCA here in the Valley, man, and just going to the inner, all of them, bro. Maryvale, Central, Carl Hayden, Trevor Brown, South, you know, and you go to these schools, bro, and I would literally, shout out to Coach Cleveland Dansby. I remember going to practices, bro, like Carl Hayden, and it'll be 13 players. You can't even run 11 on 11, bro. Cause guess what? Half of those players, they're breadwinners for their family.
Yep.
And that's more important than, you know what I'm saying, running 7-on-7 skelly, you know what I'm saying?
Man.
But go ahead, man. I didn't want to
Bro,
cut you off, but
no,
I hear you, man.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, it just, and then the cats that want it bad enough, like, are willing to, like you're saying, they're the breadwinner in the family too, where they're working after practice or whatever, right? But it teaches you that grind and that drive. You know, the sad part that happens is we get so focused on like, you know, you ask a kid nowadays and it's like, well, you know, what do you want to do, right? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And it's like, oh, I want to be in the league. And it's like, okay, but what are you doing right now to be in the league? Smoking? Like, that's not gonna get you there.
They have no idea.
You know what I mean?
They
like,
have no idea.
Yeah, and it's like, there's, you know, one thing I remember hearing. I remember a parent was talking to me about like, well, this coach isn't great or whatever it be, and my son is in 3rd grade and he's working with a quarterback coach that played in college, and I'm like, all right, cool, and he's got potential to be a D1 quarterback, and I was like, this kid's in 3rd grade, man. You don't know if he's gonna grow. You don't like, you know what I'm saying?
No
and so
you don't even know if the kid want to play.
yeah, man. And so, but I think it's you know, sometimes it gets toxic as like the sports culture can become toxic now, and that's the scary part of it, because it takes away from the lessons you learn, and you know, now we're just grooming them to be the guy or the girl, right? Like this is like I'm him or whatever that you know that
that's
that
the big
saying is,
the
right?
big one right now. I'm him.
Yeah, man. And so like you look at like I love looking at like Baller's Life and all that stuff on social
IG,
media.
yeah,
I love that
yeah.
stuff, man. But like you look at them and it's like, dude, like there's a difference between like knowing like being confident and all that, but there's some of the attitudes you see. It's like, man, like I would never want to coach you, bro. Like even you could be the best cat in the world, but it's like, how would I coach you though?
Yeah.
And so you sometimes they can't get out of their own way, but I think as parents we start that early in them.
Yeah,
right?
that's like, a whole different podcast, bro.
Yeah, man.
But check this out though, because this is a perfect segue into what you just laid out for us. What would you, again, like I want you to, put on your leadership, teacher, pastoral hat on when you start looking at culture right now from the youth standpoint.
Yeah.
What would, again, another loaded question.
Yeah.
But what would you say, in your opinion, right? What would you say is the thing that youth are struggling with the most right now? The youth of America, right? When let's call it from high school to young adulthood.
Yeah.
22, 23 years old, when we're about done, ready to get out of college.
Yeah.
What would you say within that swath of age range is the thing that people are struggling with the most, the youth are struggling with the most?
Man, I feel like there's a lot we could say, but one thing, especially coming from the education side, is I believe like self-worth. Right? Self-worth. So like, not to say that our generation was better at it by any means, right? It's just like, and I kind of get, it sucks for Gen Z, man. They get trashed all the time. Like that sucks and I try not to do that, right? Like, but I do think, the like self-worth, I think it is, we, like I've got Instagram too, and we'll, like, you see people that are posting stuff that it's legitimately to, like the one thing I found out, like this is like being in education, being around young teens, is in social media world is the SFS. I didn't know what that meant at first, but it means shout out for shout out, right? So like I don't know who you are, but I want people to see my post, like my reel or whatever. So I'm just gonna reach out to the cats that I see in my social media and be like, hey, if you post mine or shout out me on your social, even though we have no connection, I'll do the same for you. So I can get my followers up, or right, so people can see what I'm posting. And then you look at like on Instagram, and I'm guilty of this too, like where I have a post, right? A lot of the stuff on my Instagram, if you ever look at it, majority it is
family.
My son.
I see his family.
Yeah, or food that I cook. Right, or that I grill. Right.
Hey, by the way, off topic, man, we're gonna have to. We got to break down your grilling techniques. You know what I'm saying? Because we on the same wavelength. I've been seeing what you be posting, man. A little barbecue, I love it, man.
Yeah, man. So I think for that, man, like I've made a post before.
Yeah.
And then I'll also put that post on my story.
Yep.
Right? So it's like, okay, just in case you didn't see my post,
yep,
you darn sure going to see it in the story. So it's like, I think that self-worth, man, there's so many folks that they just want to be seen and that to me now as a parent, right? I think as a parent, I want to make sure that my son is like, I'm sure you grew up the same way. It was like, hey, out of sight, out of mind at home, right? Like, sit down, shut up.
Yep.
Same as church, the church I grew up in. Like, that's what I love about the church I work for now, is we have a separate ministry where students can come and not go to where their parents are at.
Yeah.
Right? And now we're encouraging you to sit in this group and talk.
Yeah.
Right? Like, in growing up in the church I grew up in, other than saying amen or hallelujah, that was the only time you could talk.
And don't fall asleep at church either.
Right? Like, and so
don't fall asleep.
Even though none of this stuff that like maybe majority of those topics at the ages from like 10 to 15 had nothing to do with what I was dealing with in life, right? And so I think that self-worth, man, is like they just want to be seen and they want to be heard, but I think it's a parenting thing too, man. Like, I do. I really do.
You hitting on some stuff right now, bro.
Yeah.
because it really is, man. We are, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That we want to have a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like, it's crazy, man. It's just like, you go to restaurants, you go in public, you go to cafeterias, and cats are sitting right here breaking bread,
Yeah.
but everybody's on their phone, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Texting each other across the table, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I'm sitting here, you're
Yeah,
sitting
look
there,
at
we're
that.
eating,
Look
and
at
we're
this meme real
yeah,
quick,
look at
man.
this boy, look at this boy. You know what I'm saying? Like texting each other
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah.
And you said something that's powerful that I don't want to speed past. You talked about the shout out for shout out. Being acknowledged, being seen, is crazy, man. Because the majority of affirmations now, right, especially with males, bruh.
Yeah.
Like you see this a lot with males, is we don't sit here and say, "Hey, man, I got you. I love you, bro.
Yeah.
If you need anything, let me know. Hey, I see you out there." We always catch people doing something bad, but we never catch people doing something good.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I got you. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, encouraging, complimenting, praising, motivating, inspiring one another.
Yeah.
We don't see that in the flesh.
Yeah.
But if you like my post, if you love my post, because there's levels to this too, right?
Yeah.
You laugh at it, you like it, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever app you're of choice.
Yeah.
That stuff is important for people, bro. And it's one of those things that our identities, our self-worth has been relegated, bruh, to a heart button.
Yeah.
Has been relegated to a like button.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah. One thing I've tried to do, man, is I started this a couple of years ago, and I've had times where I've been super consistent with it, and then times where it's like, all right, once a month. But I started challenging myself to reach out to folks in my life, right, like friends, family, and really just a quick conversation, phone call, where it's just, hey, man, like I just wanted to just call and just let you know, man, like I appreciate everything you've done in my life, or being my friend, or whatever it is, right? Just to and like shine a light on the things that they do well, right? Like my boy Tommy in New Hampshire, one of my Army buddies, man, and me and him talk pretty consistently. I try to be in my friendships. I do try to be intentional with reaching out for one, but also like truly letting them know how much I appreciate them, right? Because like that's stuff that I wish I got more as a kid. Like in my family, specifically on my mom's side, it's more their way of showing love was like talking trash, or like, or clowning, you know what I mean? And so,
and we still do it,
and
you know what I'm saying?
but
it's still a form
but it's
of,
like, but then you you sit there and let's say you got in trouble at school, or you failed a class, and then everybody gonna know
Start
about it in your
roasting you.
family, right?
Yeah,
So then that next barbecue, oh, look at big dummy over here, right? Like just like little stuff like that, where
man.
you don't get that affirmation, man. And so now my wife has encouraged me big time with like saying like positive, or my wife reads parenting stuff, right? And so one thing that I remember her telling me was that, and I'm still trying to work on it, was not telling my son when he's in a emotional state, or being a turd, man, is telling him you're fine, right? Because it completely like invalidates what he's feeling
his
at
experience,
that time, right? Even though he truly is like wilding out for no reason, but it's like, hey, why not? Let's break down why we're acting like this right now. What's the problem? And because we grew up, and it was
that's
just
how we
like,
grew up.
Hey,
that's
bro,
how we grew
like,
up.
Hey, you want me to give you something to cry for? And it's like,
I'll give
no,
you something
I'm
to really
crying,
cry
bro.
about.
Like, right? Like,
Wait till we
so,
get home.
yeah.
And then it's even worse. Like,
man. So, yeah, dude, I think that's big, man. Like just understanding that stuff.
Yeah, man. I love it. A lot of times when you start looking at it, it doesn't matter what domain we're talking about. It can be ministry. It can be. You can be a CEO of a big company. You can be an aspiring athlete. Trying to make the team, whatever the case may be. And I call it the bypass paradox. A lot of times people will use people. They'll try and bypass people to get to what they want. 100%. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in, and I love to hear your thoughts on this, is that I don't care what you're in, bro. I don't care if you're a pastor. I don't care if you're a painter. I don't care if you're a teacher. Every business always, every domain always comes down to people. We even saw this with COVID. Because COVID, it was just like, oh yeah, we can just do online, and it exposed the world, right? So it's like you could do a lot of stuff online, but everything comes down to people. Every business comes down to people. Every organization comes down to people. How people, like as you were saying, how they are viewed, their self-esteem, their self-worth, how they're treated, like you shared with your son, like how they're validated in terms of what they're feeling, what they're going through. I just want you to talk about the importance of that, because you're a shepherd, man. Like you help to shepherd people, you care for people, you validate people, right? Like how do you navigate that conversation of, dog, you can't just like use people to get what you want, or you can't just skim past a conversation because you don't want to talk about this point. Like, how do you do it when it comes to getting to where you're trying to go, helping the people, and not bypassing them for your own selfish gain?
I think you just once you show somebody that you truly care about them, right? Like as a teacher, man, like I haven't taught since I left teaching in 2020, or in February 2020, right? And I didn't leave it because I hated teaching. I loved that job, man. Like it was just that call to ministry. And so for me, I believe that every student I had knew that I was going to be the same Mr. Woodard every time they came in, and that I actually cared about them, right? And showing that I cared about them. Like it man, you could be wilding out one day, and then the next day, if you came in my class, it was, hey, let's restart, right? And so I think, I could have been just sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how do I become a principal? Like, what do I have to do to become a principal? Like, obviously, there's different steps that you have no choice but to do, right? Go to school, blah, blah, blah. Now, if I'm just focused on this goal, how much am I missing, right? Like how much, like, would I have known that I was having a student that couldn't afford deodorant, right? Would I have ever known that if I didn't get to know this kid, right? Or if I didn't at least set up an environment where they felt comfortable enough to come and talk to me about that, right? Like me and my wife, we coached the girls basketball team at the school, and my wife would be blown away by how much these girls would just want to, like, they would tell us everything, right? Like, where it's like they confided in you, where and there were certain conversations we had to like and escalate, and so but I think it's because they knew you cared about them, right? It's the same in ministry. It's the same. We read a book as a team. We read a book called The Way of the Shepherd, and great book because it's short. I'm not a big reader, man, and it's short, but it's talking about leadership, but it's using like a legitimate shepherd and how you tend to your flock, right? And man, that book, it taught you, man, you know your people. You could be a coach, know your players, right? Like if you're a CEO, know the folks that are under you, that are supposed to be putting out the mission of your company. As a father, know your wife. As a husband, know your kids as a father. Like, so it's just so much that where I think that slow is smooth, smooth is fast thing happens too, right? Like, whereas, dude, yeah, of course we want to grind to get where we want to be, but that's the part is like you got to grind though, right? Like, so I think the importance of knowing the people in whatever realm it is that you're in is important to that becoming successful.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, it's just like you got to know your people. People in times of when you start to think about it, right? In times of peril, in times of prosperity, people. This is one of my mentors told me this. People always run to two things. They run to love and they run to safety. They need to know that they're being loved, that they're going to be loved, and that they're going to be safe. Yeah. Psychologically, physically, emotionally, they're going to be safe. And that's thank God for you and your wife, because that was you two were a safe place for these girls to tell you everything, like to tell you anything, and all the players and people that you work with. So, that's really good, man. I love that, man. As we get ready to close, once again, we're here with Houston Woodard, local pastor here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I want to do we've been doing this section called reverse psychology, right? So if you so if you had the opportunity, or a group of pastors, right? Let's say you represent pastors. What are 1 to 2 questions that a pastor or pastors would want to ask a psychologist or a psychology practitioner about, either to help themselves or help the people that they're helping?
Man.
So you put me on the spot right now.
Yeah. Oh, man. Let's say, I think one question would be, why is it so easy to start making I'm trying to think of like how to word this, but why does it become so easy to make it a me thing rather than pointing your finger to Jesus? Right? Right? Like, why does it, like one thing I've tried to do, and it's not, I don't want to say it's hard, but I'm intentional in trying to eliminate saying this, is one thing that you hear a lot is like, oh, my student's room, my coaches,
my ministry,
right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this ain't mine.
Yeah.
So like, why is that so easy? Like, it just rolls off the tongue, man. Like,
bruh.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite subject is themselves. When you look at a picture that a group of us took, right? Like, let's say a group of us got together and take a picture. The first person we zoom in on is ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're our favorite topic. There's something about the preservation of our identity, the preservation of our existence, our reputation, that is inherent in all human beings. Period. Full stop. And so when you get into this, I was just talking about this. It's funny you bring it up, because I was just talking about this the other day, and I was telling my kids, I'm like, because no church is perfect, no person's perfect.
Yeah.
So anytime you get into a situation where you see a pastor doing this, read this that I wrote, read my book. My book is going to be the answer to all your deals, right? Come to my deal. Come to our thing. And once the buck stops here, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You're in trouble, dude.
And that's what I love about our church, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've never heard someone say, like, from stage or any of our teaching pastors, anything. I've never heard somebody say, this is the church you have to come to.
Yeah.
Our church, right? Bro, even so much so where they've done a campaign called More Than Us, where it's raising funds for churches in the valley, because the mission is to reach the valley for Christ, right?
That's right.
And so it's like, man, they're giving resources to churches,
right,
especially in that 2020 time where we're hurting, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, that's what, you do get the knock on being a big church and all this stuff, but it's like, man, I'm telling you, if only you knew what they do, it would change your perspective about it.
Yeah.
It's huge, bro.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And to that point, it's just like, even Paul in the New Testament, he said, follow me as I follow Christ, right? It's just like, we have to get the traffic to stop here, not to not stop here, but to continue doing this.
Yeah.
As long as you keep doing this, you're gonna be good.
Yeah.
Keep doing this.
Yeah.
Hey man, I might not know the answer, but let's pray about it. Hey, I might not know the answer, but I have other people that know the answer. Like, I'll get people to ask me, hey Joe, do you work with this type of athlete? Do you work with this type of person? Do you work with, females? Do you work with both? I'm like, look, I might not be the person for you, but I have people that I can point you to.
Yeah.
And so, to answer your question, I think that power and control are intoxicating.
Yeah.
They're intoxicating, man.
Yeah.
And when you have power and you have control, it's easy to be possessive of it and be like, hey, come to check out my.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've learned, even with the people in this room, is I would rather have 50% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape. What do I mean by that? I'll collaborate all day, because there are people that can do things that I can't do. They play at things I work at.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I'm like, yo, man, like What kind of camera should I use? Like, I'm over here fumbling with stuff. They're like, yo, man, just do this one right here. Just use this. Boom. And I'm like, yo, right?
Yeah.
God gave each and every one of us gifts, talents, and abilities that not everyone has, right? Because if we could do everything, right, we wouldn't need God, or we wouldn't need each other.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think that, to your question, I think that power is intoxicating, control is intoxicating, and it's easy for people to do this, right? Because they're not focused this way.
Yeah.
That's how I would answer that question.
Yeah. Dude, that one, it's just something like you sit there and you're, I'll catch it, right? And I was like, and I'll even say it like mid-sentence, like, oh, not my, like our students, right? Or these students or whatever. And then I think my other question would be is like I know you do like sports psychology, right? Like, or with athletes, right? If regardless of the athletic perspective or business perspective or church perspective, why do we let stats define our success, right? Like, I get it from an athlete, like a professional specifically, right? You're gonna get cut or whatever it be, but sometimes I think it completely diminishes the hard work that you've put in, because maybe your batting average isn't 270 and it's 214, right? But but your all your mechanics have been correct. You're not getting it.
Yeah.
Like, so why do you feel like, like in ministry, being at a small campus right now and trying to grow it, sometimes it's hard not to sit there and be like, man, only 6 high schoolers showed up today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like, who cares if it's only that's 6 kids you could have impacted to bring to Christ. So it's like, why do you think, from like your, like, I'm not a psychology guy at all. Why do you think stats mean so much?
That's a great question, bro. It's a great question. Stats mean so much because it's tangible. This is what I did. Look what I can do. Right? I scored 10 touchdowns, bro. How many you score? Bro, I shot, 80% from the field, bro. What'd you shoot?
Yeah.
It gives us a tangible marker of what we've done. But this is the problem with statistics. You cannot, we did this whole thing on performance and identity. You cannot base your identity on how you performed, because performance changes. By definition, your performance will change night after night, week after week, year after year.
Yeah.
Just go look at the back of any professional athlete's baseball card, football card, basketball card, fill in the blank. Stats change, bro. But when you perform from a place of purpose, like who you are and whose you are, the statistics, they're important, but it's not right or die. Like, that's not do or die situation there. And so there's this big thing that we've been doing lately called the platforms of performance, right? So on one platform is the platform of existence. I'm just existing. I'm just here. I'm just here, man. I'm on the team. I'm happy to have the jersey. I'm just here, and I'm loving it. I love the free food. I love the bus rides. You know what I mean? I'm just here. Right? When you start talking about professional athletes, you don't really see that a lot. Then you have the platform of survival. I'm just trying to not get cut. I'm not trying to get released, sent back home, DFA'd. I'm just trying to get a hit, bro, so I stay up in this mug. I'm just trying to throw strikes so that my ERA goes down and I get dudes out. I'm just trying to get on the field, bro, to show these coaches what I can do. Right? It's a place of survival. But the thing about survival platform is that you're fighting to get back to zero. It's doggy paddling in the middle of the ocean. How long is that gonna last? How long is that gonna last, bro? I don't care how good of a swimmer you are. When you're doggy paddling in the middle of the ocean, it's only a minute before you're gonna tap out. So when you're surviving, that's a different type of hustle, different type of energy, and you're gonna tap out. Then you have existence, you have survival. Then you have where a lot of athletes are improving. They're trying to prove that they belong. They're trying to prove all them haters wrong. I'm trying to prove my mom, my daddy, my granny, them right. I'm trying to prove that, I'm good enough. I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm good enough. I'm trying to prove that I'm better than this clown. You know what the problem with proving is? Anytime you talk about proving, there's always doubt. Anytime you try to prove anything, doubt is always present. Even in the court of law, I'll give you, case in point. There's always a prosecutor and there's always a defendant. And what do they say? You must prove beyond a reasonable what?
Doubt.
Doubt.
Yeah.
Anytime you are proving anything, the doubt is right there.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there have been great athletes, Hall of Fame athletes, legendary athletes who had whole careers based on proving people wrong. One of them just retired. You know, big time player for the New England Patriots. We know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, dude.
There's been a lot of Hall of Famer boxers, football players, basketball players, like and their whole thing is prove. But man, you know what? When you're doing that and you don't stack up with stats, when you don't stack up with results, it sends us back to survival.
Gotcha.
And then ultimately, the biggest platform is purpose. When you're performing from a place of purpose, you know who you are, you know whose you are, you know what you believe in. It's unshakable. It's not performance-based. God loves you no matter what. And it's one of those things where at the end of the day, man, it doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah.
Because I have my you know, I can rest my head knowing that I'm good. That's how I would answer that question.
I like that.
So Houston, you have a situation where you're in a room full of 10,000 people, aspiring people, high-performing people, and you get a chance to encourage them for 5 minutes. What are you telling them, man? What's on your head and heart, man, to encourage the people today?
Man, I think I know, like, being a pastor, this is, like, you know, what you think a pastor would say, but just from what it's done in my life, from what I come from and what I've been through, I would just say, man, try Jesus, man. Like, you know, go check it out if you're not a believer, and if you are a believer, man, like, dive into your faith. Like, what more can you do? Like, are you serving? Are you in the Word? Are you in a group of some sort? Whether that's an accountability group or a neighborhood group or whatever. Like, I think that just based on my own personal life, what it's done for me and my family since I fully bought into it, right? Like, and by no means is it perfection. Is it, you know, is everything always amazing in my life? Like, no, like, still got struggles and everything that comes along with life. But, you know, if I have that opportunity if I ever have an opportunity to speak to 10,000 people at a time, I'm going to tell you right away about how amazing Jesus is. And, you know, and just to continue just pushing through that and knowing that maybe you haven't had somebody that's been there for you your whole life. Maybe you haven't had a father that's always there or a mother or whatever, but Jesus is always going to be there, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that would be my biggest thing to say, because of, now, if you asked me this 5 years ago, I'd have gave you a completely different answer. But now, in the position I'm in and like how I've, you know, been operating and going about life, man, I think that it's like, remember them books, Chicken Noodle Soup for the Soul?
Yeah.
Like, bro, I feel like you just, like, obviously we got the Bible, man, but like, if I could just write a book and just tell you, just title it Jesus, man, like, just try this.
Yeah.
This is the recipe for everything, to make it better, right? To make it, to make the wounds heal, to make the hurt, you know, like, feel, you know, make you feel better about it, make the good stuff even better, right? Like, that would be probably the biggest thing I'd talk about to 10,000 something people, right? I could tell you slow is smooth is fast. I could tell you all this stuff, man, but like, for me, bro, I would honestly point my fingers to Jesus, man, because if he's worked in me, bro, like, through all the dumb stuff I've done and the things I've experienced and what I grew up in, then shoot, I honestly believe that he work in anybody, man. So
Yeah.
that's what I'd say.
I love it, man. Drop the mic, man.
Yeah.
Drop the mic. So for our guest, Houston Woodard, I'm Josiah Gano of the All Things Performance Podcast, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate it, bro.
All right, man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.